Welcome to the third Lunch and Learn session in the series on operational excellence. This session's topic is understanding the customer, achieving organizational alignment through customer focus. This session is sponsored by Jamestown Community College Workforce Readiness. The session is facilitated by Max Krug from Future State Engineering. We hope that you enjoy the session.
Okay, good day everyone. Today's session, Lunch and Learn Session 3, Understanding the Customer, Achieving Organizational Alignment Through Customer Focus. So the last session we talked about necessary conditions actually in the first session. Last time we talked about culture. Today we're going to talk about the first bullet, satisfying all the customer needs. So one of the necessary conditions of achieving operational excellence is we understand the customer needs and we're able to satisfy all those needs. Again, a Dilbert fan, so what customer focus is not. So the guy says, our goal is to ship 1 million units this quarter. Dilbert says, do we have any goals that involve making our customers happy? And the guy says, I'm talking about our goals, not their goals. The boss says, yeah, totally different. So the focus here is we don't want to, operational excellence isn't internal focused. It's about external focus. So what is customer focus? It's understanding the customer needs better than they understand their own needs. Or even better, understanding the needs that they don't understand that they actually have. A quote from Henry Ford said, if I asked the people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So sometimes our customers get caught in that paradigm of this is what we want because that's what we've always wanted. They don't understand that they might have additional needs that we can provide to them because they're caught in that paradigm of, oh, yeah, our mode of transportation is horses. So to get better transportation, we need faster horses. They don't think about, oh, there's a different mode of transportation that we can provide them. So think in terms of your customer needs. Yes, a lot of their needs are based on their perceptions or paradigms. We got to break out of that paradigm thinking. Delivering something the customer doesn't think is possible can actually differentiate you from your competitors. If we talk to our customers and they complain to us about their issues, if there's issues, there's an opportunity. Many companies I work with, they have customers that are complaining. You need to listen to those complaints, and from what we talked about last session, those are the undesirable effects. You need to take those undesirable effects and say, what does that mean? What are they actually complaining about? Oh, we have late deliveries, or your lead times are too long. Right? So what is their complaint and what's the need that you're not satisfying? We need to understand how we're not satisfying those needs and what we need to change to satisfy those needs. So I put a couple small companies up here that you might have heard about that I consider have a decisive competitive advantage. And they're large companies because they're satisfying a need that the customer didn't know that they actually have. So they're providing huge value to the customer. And what is value? So the best definition I found is what Dr. Goldratt actually developed as his value definition. He defined value as creating or removing a significant limitation for the customer in a way that was not possible before, to the extent that no significant competitor can deliver. Just to show that a decisive competitive advantage doesn't discriminate, there's a service company here, a logistics company, a manufacturing company, and a distribution company. So it doesn't matter if you're a service company, it doesn't matter if you're a logistics company, it doesn't matter if you're a manufacturer, there is an opportunity for a decisive competitive advantage because these 4 companies have proved it. So if you think of these companies and think of terms of value in terms of the limitation in the definition here, what limitation did they remove for people? So now if anyone wants to answer that, I'm going to leave that as an open question. Or FedEx, what limitation did they remove for people? Amazon, if people shop Amazon, what limitation do they remove for you? And then if you're not familiar with Omron, they actually developed the first handheld blood pressure monitoring device. You can take your blood pressure at home. What limitation did they remove? So I want people to respond on what they think those limitations are, and then we'll have a discussion about that. So I also want to talk about what is value and what is price. So what's the difference between value and price? Value is only meaningful when it's expressed in terms of specific product or service, which meets the customer needs at a specific time. So it's the degree which the organization meets its customer needs, which defines the value the organization provides. So I'm going to give an example here. Let's just say that you're on your way to an important meeting and you have a business deal that you're going to close for $5 million. On the way to the meeting, your car gets a flat tire. So given that specific need at that specific time, what are you willing to pay to get that tire fixed? Now, different scenario, you wake up on a Saturday morning, nothing important to do. You go out to your car, you have a flat tire. Different need, different time, what are you willing to pay to get that tire fixed? Same problem, totally different value perspective. Okay, so we need to understand that customers' needs can change over time, and at specific times they might have different needs and are willing to pay more for a service given the current conditions. So if we can understand those conditions that the customer has, we can actually offer our products at different values based on what needs they have at a specific point in time. So we call that market segmentation. We're not going to get into market segmentation in this session. We get into more of that in the operational excellence workshop, but we'll talk about price and value. Now let's talk about price. So what is price? Price is determined by how much value or how much the customer is willing to pay based on the level of value that that product or service provides, which a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to figure out their cost. Price has nothing to do with cost. The customers don't care about your cost. So the example I'd like to use is our smartphones. So you're willing to pay so much for a smartphone because it brings huge value for you. Do you really care how much it costs to make this? If you did, you'd probably wouldn't want to pay what they charge for those because it's probably less than $50 to produce that item, and you're paying $1,000 for that product. So it has nothing to do with cost. So a lot of companies get wrapped up in trying to understand what their costs are. And okay, why do you need to do that? Well, we need to understand how much it costs us to make the product so we understand what to charge. The customers don't care what it costs you to make it. They only care about how much value that that product or service is bringing for them. So all this effort that people are doing to try to understand their costs when the customers don't care about it really isn't, to me, is a lot of wasted effort. So trying to get more accurate costs doesn't help us in terms of the perspective of operational excellence. So what are useful outputs? So useful outputs are defined as the necessary and sufficient inputs as defined by the next step in the process. So if we look at an organization or we look at a process step, there's certain outputs that that process step is designed to achieve. Those outputs become the inputs for the next step. So from an operational excellence perspective, the customer defines the necessary and sufficient requirements, and those become the inputs to the outputs that the process needs to deliver. And so we work backwards. So those customer needs define the process outputs. Those outputs define the process criteria. Those process criteria define the process inputs, and those inputs define the supplier criteria. So we're working backwards from the customer. So one of the foundational concepts of operational excellence is the customer defines the requirements for the processes that are necessary and sufficient to meet their needs. So of course, if we don't understand those customer requirements, how do we achieve operational excellence? It's impossible. The customer requirements are defining the requirements for our internal processes that are necessary and sufficient to meet their needs. And again, we talked about necessary and sufficient in the first session. Necessary is that it needs to achieve the required outputs of our customer. Sufficient means it needs to be correct. So we need both of those conditions to achieve operational excellence. Looking at levels of competitive advantage, there's different levels of competitive advantage. And so I've developed this pyramid that's really based on the concept of blue ocean strategy. So if you haven't read that book, Blue Ocean Strategy, it's a good book to read because it talks about how to create uncontested market space. I see Google, I see Amazon in that blue ocean, uncontested market space. So at the bottom of the pyramid is the red ocean, and the number of competitors is large. And going up the axis here, the vertical axis is the time for competitors to replicate. So we know the lowest level of competitive advantage is price. So if you're competing against your competitors on price, how long before the competitors can match your price? I can give a price for a service or a product. Immediately, they can undercut me. So you don't want to be competing here in this price because that's the lowest level of competitive advantage, and it's a shark frenzy, right? Everyone's trying to compete for the same type of products or delivering the same products based on price. The next level up I put is quality. So this is really the form, fit, and function, or the service that you're providing to the customer that's satisfying their immediate need. That can gain you a little bit of competitive advantage if you have superior quality relative to competitors, but it's not a long-term solution. The next level up is changing a deep-rooted policy. So this is internally focused to your organization. So you have a lot of policies, and sometimes those policies are actually not meeting are actually preventing you from giving great customer service. So the example I like to use here is the Postal Service. So when do most people go to the post office during the work week? They usually go their lunch hour. When do the post office take their lunch? During your lunch hour. So you walk in, there's 20 people standing in line and one person at the counter, right? Because their policy is we take lunch from noon to 1. Well, how about if I change that policy and take lunch when we have an off-peak period? Can significantly improve the customer service. So think about your organizations. What policies do we have in place currently that are preventing us from giving superior customer service? And they're all over the place. So if we can change an internal policy that opens up the opportunity to satisfy a customer need to the extent that nobody else can, it's going to give you a competitive advantage. So these things are easy to find if you know what to look for, and it can give an immediate impact in terms of better service. The next step up is changing a paradigm for the customer. So this is changing the way the customer thinks. So back with the Henry Ford quote, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, because their paradigm is horses is the mode of the only mode of transportation. So I like to use Walmart as an example here. So people that are familiar with Walmart and what it was prior to Walmart. So the paradigm prior to Walmart was if I needed drugs, I went to the drugstore. If I needed groceries, I went to the grocery store. If I needed my eyes checked, I went to my eye doctor. But they said, hey, we can bring that all together, and you can have your oil changed in your car, do your grocery shopping, get your prescription filled, have your eyes checked, all in one-stop shop. So that was a change in paradigm for the customer. You don't need to go to 10 different shops to get what you need. You can do it all in one shop. So Walmart became a huge organization because they changed the paradigm for the customer. Then we move up to the highest level of competitive advantage, removing that limitation for the customer. So if we can remove a significant limitation, it can give us huge competitive advantage for a long period of time. So Amazon fits this model. So what limitation do they remove? Does anybody have comments on those 4 companies that I suggested, what their limitation that they remove for people? Do we have any comments, Kathleen? So if I look at Google, what limitation did they remove? It's the access to information. I don't need to go to the library. I don't need to go to a publication. I have access to information immediately at my hands. If we look at Amazon, what limitation did they remove? I don't need to go to the store to get what I need. It's delivered to my house, and I can shop, I can check availability, and I can check price competitively with multiple people from one location. Omron, the company that did the handheld monitoring device, I don't need to go to the doctor to have my blood pressure checked. I can do it from home. Okay, and then FedEx, I don't need to wait 3 weeks to have my package delivered, right? I can have it overnight. So the common denominator of all 4 of those is saving time for the customer. So removing a significant limitation, I want you to think about your business. How are you wasting your customer's time? If you're wasting your customer's time, there's opportunities for a significant competitive advantage. So let's just do a quick review here. Customer focus, delivering something that the customer doesn't think is possible that will differentiate you from your competitors. So start with those needs. How can we deliver something that people don't even believe it's possible? The foundation for operational excellence. First one, the customer defines the requirements for the processes and that are necessary and sufficient to meet their needs. Aligning all processes in the organization to service those needs is what operational excellence is about. So it's not internal focused, right? Oh, we can improve these processes, but if it's not going to bring more value for the customer, why are we doing it? So remember our focus definition from the previous sessions. What does focus mean? Doing what should be done, doing and not doing what shouldn't be done. So value is the degree which the organization meets the customer needs, and removing that significant limitation from the customer will provide huge value for the customer. So when we start aligning all our internal processes to service those needs of the customer, that's our customer focus. So that's it for today's session. We can open it up for questions. Comments? There's no questions or comments. We can talk about upcoming events. I think, Delana, did you want to talk about this, what we have upcoming?
Yes, thank you, Max. On behalf of JCC's Workforce Readiness and Future State Engineering, I'd like to thank you for attending today's Lunch and Learn. If you liked today's session and want to learn more, we're offering an 8-hour online operational excellence class, which gets more in depth on how to create a high-performing organization. Dates for the class are Tuesdays and Thursdays, May 12th, 14th, 19th, and 21st from 9 to 11 a.m. The registration information is on the last slide that you see up right now, and we hope that you're able to join us for this online session. We think it'll be great, and it will obviously get more in depth in all of the topics that we've been talking about, and we'll give everyone a better understanding and more hands-on as well.
In addition, the next series of Lunch and Learn. So next week, May 13th, we're going to be talking about measurement and key performance indicators. The 20th, building accountability into the process. So how do we hold people accountable? We do that by building accountability into the process. And then 27th, achieving buy-in through the Socratic approach. So the Socratic approach is about asking the right questions to get buy-in from the people that we're working with. Any questions?
How do you register to the Lunch and Learn series, the next 3 sessions?
If you've already registered for the first 3, you will be automatically added to the list for the remaining sessions. And then we will also be sending out more information to all of our contacts once again, in case there are other people interested in joining on these sessions.
So if no one has any questions, I think this is it for today.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Max. It was amazing.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Max.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone for joining us.